Hello, we're looking in the conic section, which is chapter 9 now. This is lesson 9.1 about the ellipse. This is example 1. Now, before we actually do example 1, I need for you to look on page 876 of your textbook and pay attention to the blue box here that's going to explain that this right here is the equation for what an ellipse should look like in standard form. And notice that they almost look the same, except for a squared is under the x squared this time, and b squared is under the x squared in the other one. A squared always represents your larger axis or larger distance. Now, that a and b really represent the distance from the center of the ellipse to its outside edges, or its vertices as we call it. So A would represent that, B represents the same thing but in the opposite or perpendicular direction. Now, the other thing you need to remember is right here, that when you're using an ellipse, the form c squared equals a squared minus b squared is something you just have to remember, because the c part here is going to be how we find our focus. So anyway, once you find your center, which is whether something's attached to here or here, the one we're going to do here in a second, there's nothing attached to the x or y, which simply means it's going to be at 0, 0. But then we're going to go, if the bigger number's under x, then we're going to go that much left and right, because that's what the x does. And whatever the b value is after taking the square root, then that will tell us how much we're going to go up and down, because that's what the y direction is. All right? So let's scroll down here and actually do a problem. Look at example number 2 here. If we're graphing an ellipse that's centered at the origin, first of all, if you're given this right here, 25x squared plus 16y squared equals 400, first of all, for something to be in standard form, this number over here, the one right here, has to be 1. So notice that they went through and they divided everything by 400, because that's what's going to put it into the ellipse standard form, which is x squared over 16 plus y squared over 25 equals 1. Now, couple things I want you to notice. This 25 is your a squared value, because the bigger one is always the a squared. Okay, and 16 would be considered your b squared value. Okay, in the standard form. Now, because the a squared is under the y, then your major axis or your longer axis is going to be up and down rather than left and right. All right. So, as we continue to work on through this particular problem, if I were to take the square root of, first of all, the center, because nothing's attached to the x and nothing's attached to the y, the center is going to be at 0, 0. So right here. Now, because of that, then in the x direction, or the left and right direction, I'm going to go 16. Since that's 16 and that represents b squared, I'm going to go 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. So notice they went here 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, and then they went 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. And that's where they made their vertices, or their minor axis. The same thing goes for the 25. If I take the square root of 25, that's really a 5. So notice, again, because it's under the y, they went up 5 and they went down 5 to get their vertices. Now, those 4 points, and knowing the shape of an ellipse, you should be able to, draw your ellipse, as you can see, denoted here. You can draw your ellipse, okay? Now, if we're trying to find the vertices, and I may have to come back to this, but if you're trying to find the vertices, not the vertices, I'm sorry, the foci, then they are at 0 negative C and 0 positive C. One thing you have to remember about the foci, they are always on the major axis. Always, 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 always on the major axis. So, by doing the formula I told you had to memorize, which is C squared equals A squared minus B squared, then we know what A squared is, it was 25. We know what B squared is, it was 16. And so if I take A squared minus B squared, or 25 minus 16, I'm going to end up with 9. Well, 9 represents C squared. Okay? So if C squared is 9, then C is going to be 3. So that means, again, if I start at the origin, which is 0, 0, which is where my center was, and I went up 3, I would be at 0, 3. And if I was at 0 and I went down 3, I would be at 0, negative 3. And those are, as you can see listed here, those are your two foci, or foci, as some people say, of this particular ellipse. Okay, so one of your focus points is right here, and second focus is right there. Now, the focus doesn't help you graph the ellipse at all. The only reason that it's very important is it's because it's part of the definition, that it is the same distance. If you were to add, if you were to pick a point on an ellipse and you were to add that one, and then you picked a whole different point maybe over here and you added that one and that one together, they would all end up to be the same constant value. So because it's part of the definition, that's why they make you want to find the ellipse. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. They can be tricky, but once you learn some of the basis of an ellipse, they're not that bad.